Most of us understand the importance of being a good public speaker. But if we were to look up online about how to get better at the skill, the advice in a lot of cases is not helpful. There are people talking about being confident and having courage, having good body language, and being funny on stage. And yes, sure, these things do have their own importance, but there are potentially a lot more fundamental lessons that can potentially change the way you approach not just public speaking, but communications as a whole, just like they changed mine. And here they are. The first question that I had around public speaking is something that a lot of us would have. And that is, how do we get over stage fright? How do we not feel afraid the night before a speech or right before we need to go on stage? How do we stop ourselves from shivering or our words stuttering? And how do we finally beat that crippling sense of anxiety? Before the real answer came to me, a lot of different variations of being better at dealing with stage fright were presented. Things like deep breathing, visualization, affirmations, or practicing your speech. And while those things have their own place, I didn't find them very effective. Instead, it was the realization of why I was afraid of the stage in the first place. If I ever felt myself nervous to give a presentation, I always had the recurring thoughts of, what if they don't like me? What if they make fun of me? What if they're not happy with me? They being the audience. And that's when the realization hit that we have made public speaking a me game. It's all about us. What if we mess up? What if this happens? What if that happens? And in reality, public speaking is barely ever about the speaker. It's almost always about the audience. So to really understand how to manage stage fright better, we need to shift our focus from ourselves onto the audience. And when we do that, when we shift our perspective, we stop worrying so much about how we are coming across. And instead of trying to impress our audience, we're simply trying to express ourselves to them. And we don't do this by necessarily being confident or improving our body language, but we do this by simply asking ourselves one very simple question. What can I say or do that will add maximum value to my audience? And that's the main point about public speaking and communications anyways. Value. If we can achieve in either informing, persuading, or entertaining our audience, we have done our job for the most part. And that idea of shifting the focus from the speaker onto the listener was one of the main fundamental shifts that happened in my public speaking journey. The next question I had around public speaking was, how do I get better at the skill? And of course, everywhere we look, people talk about practicing. And practicing public speaking is great, but you and I both know that. The more we do it, the better we get at it. But unfortunately, we don't have access to an audience all the time to listen to our speeches. And there are options like Toastmasters or different training programs that you can attend to actually get that audience. But sometimes that might not be enough. And if we want to understand how we can really practice without an audience, we need to go back to an interview that I had seen with Tony Robbins. In case you don't know who Tony Robbins is, he's one of the greatest speakers and orators of all time. He was once asked a question, how did you get so good at speaking on stage? Were you naturally born like that, or is it because of the opportunities you had to practice it so much? And he responded with something surprising. He wasn't necessarily a gifted speaker, and in his early days he didn't necessarily have the opportunity to practice in front of large audiences. So he simply started treating every conversation like it was a speech. Whether we're speaking to somebody one-on-one, whether we're on a phone call, or speaking to a small group of people, if we strongly pay attention to the same things that we do when we deliver a presentation on stage, we will slowly but surely start seeing an improvement in the way we communicate as a whole. And this changed the way I approached practicing for a speech. I did not practice just for a speech. I started practicing in every conversation. I would strongly pay attention to how I'm communicating. Am I being able to engage the other person? Am I being able to communicate in a clear and concise manner? Am I feeling scared about saying something in particular? Or something's coming out more easily than the others? All of these things really helped because my personality slowly from stage and in person became a lot more similar, because how I started speaking on stage is just a notch above how I would speak in a normal conversation. The next point is quite simple: to grab every stage opportunity. That's about it. I wish every point was as small as this one. But whether we are working professionals or students or in whatever setting that we might be in, we need to grab every stage opportunity that presents itself in front of us. Every time we can be in front of people, whether it's to give a presentation, host an event, or even give a small wedding toast, we need to keep taking those opportunities as much as possible despite of the initial feeling of nervousness, because that's one of the best ways to build our speaking portfolio. The next fundamental shift that took place was around engagement. When I'm speaking to an audience, why do they tend to zone out? Why are they not very interested in what I have to say? And when I say an audience, I just don't mean during presentations, but even during conversations. The best response I got in answer to this was that the reason why most people zone out and why something like death by PowerPoint is a real thing is because we are very focused on informing as opposed to narrating. When we have a lot of information and we just speak it out, people won't necessarily comprehend it. But if we can figure out a way to take all that information and turn it into a story, that's when we'll be able to hold people's attention. And if you want to know how you can take information and build it into a story, we've created an entire video on that, which I highly recommend you check out to become a better public speaker and communicator right here.